So first of all, thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to join us. We know it's been a long year, and Zoom fatigue is real for everyone. So we're really grateful that you took the time out of your day to join us today. So on behalf of everyone on the Census team, we have been working, like you probably heard before, and in the emails, we've been working the last few months on this project, and we're really excited to give you a sneak preview of what we've been up to and sort of a snapshot on where community is today. And we think it's going to be a great foundation to help us build on that for the future.
Wonderful. Thank you, JJ. So I'll jump in. We have 3 parts in this presentation. In the first part, we'll present the genesis of this initiative. And then we will go in and present some very, very, very preliminary findings from what we've been able to collect so far. And then at the very end, we truly invite your input because as you'll hear from Georgie, this is our effort to better understand the community and better understand what would best serve the community. And so we need your input for that. So before I hand off to Georgie, I wanted to share, for those of you who couldn't attend the town hall, we've been thinking a lot about how we organize, how we engage in Sandbox. And this is a working model of all the different groups in Sandbox.
And I want just a quick flag. I think you might be displaying the wrong slides. I know the slide you're talking about, and I just see board of directors up on the screen.
Oh, very strange. Thank you. Okay, I was in the wrong place.
Ooh, there we go. That's the one.
Got lost in Zoom. Yes, so for those of you who didn't make it to the town hall, this is our working model of how things are organized. And I want to give a huge shout out. It's a working group actually that welcomed me in March. And I blame Min, he was part of this. He posted it in Facebook. And this is the Today and Tomorrow group. So with that, Georgie, just tell me when you want me to.
Yeah, happy. If you want to slip to the next slide, that'd be great. Cool. So some of you might be familiar, remember this post back in February this year. Rafa and I started a working group called Sandbox Today and Tomorrow. And the idea behind the group was we tend to spend a lot of time having conversations about what Sandbox is, or who is Sandbox, more importantly, and trying to work out how we can make decisions about who we want to become. So we decided to start a group to better understand who we are as a community, and then to be able to provide valuable inputs for the design of who we'd like to be tomorrow, hence today and tomorrow. And in order to make decisions, it really helps to have a better understanding of who's actually part of this community. Where do we live? How do we work? How diverse are we? And we haven't quite mapped out who we have become. So if you want to flick to the next slide, Netra.
Is this the one you're talking about? Or
I think that's one of all the team, yeah. So we put a call out for volunteers, and we're incredibly happy to hear that so many people are enthusiastic and really keen to get into this project. So we have Danica, myself, JJ, Hal, Maddie, Maya, Mentor, Michael, Min, Netra, Rafa, and Richard, who have been showing up sometimes multiple times a week.
There we go.
You found one on Zoom. That was the check-in with regards to like bring a hat. That was the check-in. It was sort of hilarious. Yeah, working on the Today and Tomorrow projects, and the initial one is the Census. So we wanted to map out who we've become, so we can make better decisions about recruiting new members, decisions about how we operate, and we can encourage volunteers to fulfill projects, and so Sandbox can reach its full potential. And the Census then is to just do that. We want to gather data about our members that will help us highlight patterns that we can use to help us answer some of those questions. I think the main thing behind this is we realize is that there is so much Sandbox activity out there. It's just that we haven't pinned down exactly who everybody is and how we operate together, and what makes sandboxes sandboxes. So that's the first part of the Today and Tomorrow project. And We are in phase 2 right now, which is the delivery of our preliminary results at this virtual summit, and we are recording this as well, so you will get a chance for the community worldwide to hear it. Our next phase is to write a report, so especially for those nerds who really like the data, we will have one of those beautiful books, hopefully like the playbook that was created a number of years ago, where we'll have some shiny graphs and also be able to draw out some of the insights of what the graphs actually mean for us. Yeah, and I suppose it's also worth mentioning that the Today and Tomorrow project is, we've discovered, quite vast. There is a lot of work to be done as a community in terms of making decisions, helping us make decisions as a community, and its aim is to do that by surveys and workshops, hence why the census was the first one. So we probably are going to have a number of phases, and we'll come at the end of this presentation, we'll come to the next phase, and so you can get an understanding of where we're going next. I think that is effectively everything. I'm sure I've missed something, but anyway, I'll hand back over to JJ.
Awesome. Thanks for giving us the great overview there. Could you skip forward to the next slide? Or sorry, into the member turnout.
Okay, great. So there we go.
Awesome. So we're really excited today, like I said, to give you a sneak preview of the data we've learned. So first up, thanks to everyone who submitted the survey. We got a 40% completion rate, which is something, it could always be better, but we're pretty pleased with. So hopefully everyone in this call, all 32 of you, completed the form. Otherwise, it's going to be a little awkward. And awesome. So just to sort of dive into the data, and if you've got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll try and answer them to the best of our ability, or we may have to come back to you afterwards. And
sorry, I skipped ahead. That's my bad.
All good. So first up, we've got a cool little map here. And so unsurprisingly, the larger hubs are some of the older ones. So Western Europe, coastal United States, those sorts of places. And another question we asked is citizenship. So Sandbox is an incredibly global group, and we don't have hubs. We don't have hubs in every country yet. There's a huge number of citizenships that are represented. So next up, some of the questions that we really wanted to identify was who are Sandboxers. So you've got basic information like age, citizenship, that sort of stuff. But we wanted to dive a little deeper into that. So first up, as you saw earlier, we thought it was particularly important, during this year where lots of people have been put under financial strain from the COVID-19 pandemic, to sort of get a picture of how Sandboxers are doing. So fortunately, you can see here that the majority of us are doing okay, which is really great and really fortunate, especially this year. And but that's not universally true. And you can also see here there's some variation. In the data between regions, and but for the most part, Sandboxers are fortunately still doing pretty okay. And Raphael, yes, we can definitely share the slides afterwards.
I want to jump in here because as we said, this is still very preliminary data, so we're mostly working with correlations here. We haven't found any significant relationships. We haven't started testing for that yet, but this could be a potential hypothesis for us that potentially Sandbox members joining South American and African hubs and are still engaged live comfortably. We see slightly more variation in Asia, Europe, and North America, that we'd have to test that. with a larger sample perhaps to be sure, or perhaps a regression.
So, unsurprisingly, our Sandbox family is getting a little older, and this is a perennial question for us: what to do with a 30 age limit, and it's definitely a conversation that we're going to have. As you can see, our average age increases. It can definitely become more challenging for hubs to recruit younger members. So that's something we're definitely going to have a conversation on to discover different avenues of activation, so we can continue to get those younger members now that are maybe removed outside of our immediate networks.
And we see this as a potential opportunity that as we get older, we can introduce new value propositions as an organization. And we also are quite realistic about the potential decrease in one of our value propositions. So if you look at the median age of entry, which is not displayed on this graph, but it has just been annotated on this graph, you see a quite linear and evident change in the median age of entry. So in 2008, the median age of entry was 23, and that has steadily grown older. And that makes sense because the average age of Sandbox has grown older. And so we are surrounded by peers that are amazing people that we want to bring into Sandbox. This is going to be great material for us when we go forward to think about how we want to organize Sandbox and how we want to refine our strategy and our vision.
And Netcher, would you be able to click on present perhaps? We've just gotten some requests that the text is a little small and hard to see.
There we go.
Sweet.
And I think there was a question also about what is the percentage of people over 30? Was that something you have?
Yeah, so let me go back here. 50% of participants were 32 years old or older in our sample.
And we can definitely get back to you on the specific number over 30.
Okay, so in this graph, you see some raw numbers that indicate that Sandbox has grown and diversity has increased. So you see that at the beginning in 2007, we have low numbers of Sandboxers and we have more Sandboxers coming in over time. The bottom axis is the year in which people joined Sandbox. So a few highlights here. 2013 was an excellent recruiting year. So if you were an ambassador in that year, thank you. Because as you can see, most participation comes from Sandboxers who have 2 to 4 years of Sandbox experience. So they've joined in 2016 to 2018, except for 2013, which is an outlier in those previous years. So that's worth congratulating. And another interesting note is that about 90 old, quote unquote, old members are still engaged in Sandbox. So some of these early joiners, about 50% of the sample, responded to our survey. So they took the time to answer our questions. Feel free. So I wanted to be clear here. So JJ, Michael, and Michael's also in the call, I believe, did a lot of this data crunching, and all the beautiful images are from Michael. And so this is kind of why we're sharing the presentation. So this is how we're going to proceed. And just JJ and Michael, feel free to jump in if there's something that we need to underline. Okay, so moving on the same a similar version of the previous graph that we saw, but standardized to 100%, you see that we have managed to become more diverse, or more egalitarian, if you want, in terms of gender. And we have gender parity that starts in about 2016. An alternative view, of course, given that this is quite a sizable sample, although not at all a full representation of Sandbox. We can also interpret this as women are perhaps more likely to join and stay engaged. So, some questions to ask, just in the nature of keeping a critical mind. Okay, so the figures for gender are 44%, 54%, and 2%. And if we look at sexual orientation, we are mostly straight, with some bisexual, homosexual, and some who prefer not to say. Okay. In terms of Sandboxer backgrounds, 21% of Sandboxers have business or management training. So that's the largest representation here in the top left-hand corner. We also have a large representation of humanities, social sciences, arts, with 18% engineering, and I would say roughly 4 or 3% in physical and natural sciences, which is the red bar, and then about 4% in architecture, which is the blue bar in the bottom right-hand corner. So this would make sense. We call ourselves an entrepreneurial organization. I would have expected to see a little bit more scientists and engineers, but it seems we seem to have some diversity in terms of education. Let's see. Okay. Oops. All right. So what we want to answer is the question, are we diverse in the ways that matter to us most? So we talked about gender, we've talked about formation, and we're really interested in people's cultural backgrounds and in the social construct of race. But this has been extremely difficult for us to pinpoint on an international level. And Rafa and Georgie have expressed interest in, and rightly so, in conducting more specific identity-based surveys and discussions going forward. But for now, we opted for an identification question. To what extent do you agree? I am part of a minority group in this country. And you see that 44% identify as a minority in this country, although, sorry, in their country, although this is still a messy qualitative indicator. So as you can see, a few comments not divulging anyone's identity, but we have things from women in tech, mobility limitations, Asian looking, to very tall in Mexico, to white man with an Indian partner, East German in Germany, and so forth. Next, we can talk about what keeps us busy as Sandboxers. And so this is also pretty cool news. 76% of Sandboxers have co-founded at least one organization. And we see, if you look at the bottom numbers, 33% have not founded a for-profit organization, and 67% have founded at least one for-profit organization, with 35% being serial entrepreneurs. And it's great to see as well that there's some overlap, and 48% of Sandboxers have founded a nonprofit organization. This is pretty fitting with Bailey. I don't know, Bailey, if you're in the audience, but that beautiful poem that you read. Here are the top 10 industries represented in our sample. So this is quite a lot of text, so I'll just leave it up here for you to peruse. I think the main offenders are there: technology, civic social organization. Okay. But overall, we had quite a spread of different organizations. With technology, again, being the major industry here. All right, let's dive into who is engaged. This is one of our last sections, and then we can go into discussion. So we have 40% of the participants who say they are extremely likely to recommend Sandbox. So we have lots of 9s and 10s, but actually if we were a little bit more generous with our grading, and this is pointed out by Michael, Michael's notes here, 70% picked 7 or more on a 1 to 10 scale. So generally people are likely to recommend Sandbox. But once again, people who are likely to recommend Sandbox are also likely to fill out a census, which is not the most exciting thing to do. So another thing to take with a grain of salt. We conducted another analysis showing the same net promoter score. So the likelihood that you would recommend Sandbox to a Sandbox-y type of person. And this is a very interesting bimodal shape. So we see that Sandboxers who see the, excuse me for the typo, the value of Sandbox rate it higher. So these would be people who have had some exposure to it. But this also begs the question of why is there a difference between these two groups? The longer you are in Sandbox, the less likely you are to recommend it. So to clarify, these bars represent your likelihood to recommend Sandbox. And so we need to ask ourselves two questions, I believe. Who changed? Either Sandboxers who are longer in Sandbox may no longer see the value in Sandbox personally. Maybe they already made their amazing relationships through Sandbox and they have relationships with Sandboxers, but not with Sandbox, the organization. But on the flip side, we could also ask ourselves, maybe the Sandboxers who were longest in Sandbox think Sandbox as a community and as an organization has changed. So maybe our community has evolved, or maybe it's a little bit of both, but there are two ways to look at this data. Okay, so now we go to the fun part. How can we engage? How can we engage Sandbox? So as Georgie mentioned, there is a fourth phase to this initiative. Georgie, I'm presenting your slide.
Would you like to? So you may have seen conversations around purpose, the purpose of Sandbox that came up a number of months ago. And this was started by Danica and Daniel. Danica is going to be taking the lead on this for the next stage, phase 4, which is going to be working in conjunction with Today and Tomorrow. The idea behind the purpose conversations is, how are we manifesting our manifesto? Are we manifesting our manifesto? So we have a lot of values about who we are and what we believe we do in the world. And some people have the belief that we are not fulfilling those values. And it's led to some questions about what is our purpose as a community? Are we simply to help us build relationships, or do we have an external purpose outside of that? So part of the purpose of the Today and Tomorrow project is to help us actually understand who we think we are from the view of the community, and not to just make assumptions from a few key individuals. So the next stage of this project is to actually speak to the community about our purpose. So to go out there and do more surveys and workshops. And we should hopefully gather enough data to be able to first activate people and having an interest in this question, but also to understand, okay, these are the different options available for how we can move forward. And those options will ideally be put forward into separate proposals. We have now 50 signatures, which means we can activate the change mechanism for our bylaws. And those proposals can be put forward to the community to vote on, so we can make a collective decision about our purpose. That is the next stage of this project, and then after that we will be able to do further surveys and workshops as well to ask more questions from the community, focusing on things like the age limit, 30, and also membership, where we charge membership fees. So we've made great progress, and there's more to come, effectively. It's me. Oh, you're on mute.
We're done with our slides, and now we're turning it over to you. How can we engage? How can we better engage? Looking forward to your suggestions, your concerns, and any data tips as well. If you have any ideas of how we should further collect data or analyze this data.
Netra, could you make the slides public?
Yes, I pasted them. Oh, they're not public yet. So I will do that.
Yeah, I recommend making them a PDF instead of an editable document.
Okay, all right, let me do that.
Just in case I want to change the number.
Yeah, Min would do that.
Yeah, I trust you, Min.
I'm ready to change the number.
Just make it.
So how much time, just time check, how much time do we have? Yeah.
We have
This
half an hour left.
Okay.
Well, maybe we could, you know, just jump off with a few puzzles that we've been dealing with. So, you know, we shared a few slides on how we are diverse. One amazing observation is that we started off small and quite white male, and we moved towards being slightly more representative, and especially on the gender perspective. And so that's something that gives me a lot of hope. And I know the last few cohorts in Le Mans were only women. I think Robbie, you're one of. I think Robbie is maybe in here. Is like one of the few men actually. So that's exciting because it means that we can make a decision about how we want to look like as a broader community, and we can take steps towards making that possible. For example, I'm based here now in the Paris hub, and I know that they're going through Pierre Taman, Raf. I'll let you describe, but this has been a key priority for you. So this is a question that we can ask ourselves as a community. What do we want to look like going forward? And what perhaps are important measures of diversity that we need to document as a community? Because if we don't document it, then we potentially can't improve it. I don't know if Rafa, Piatam, and you want to share on that, or if anybody else wants to jump in.
Yeah, you wanna go?
Well, I mean, thanks, Netra, for I mean, first of all, thanks everyone for gathering here, for the team, for the work on the census. I think it's a really important work. I don't know, I wasn't prepared to say anything today, but just being like having gratitude about this over the last months was a bit complicated, I think, for everyone, especially with this very peculiar year. And then the old events, like the Black Lives Matter moments, the George Floyd, and all that kind of conversations that we have like had over the last months or didn't have, and like there was a lot of emotionally intense with a lot of frustrations and also a lot of vulnerability that has been shared or not. But yeah, I mean, just personal views shared. Like it was complex time for me. Also, really think about my challenging my own engagement in Sandbox as the Paris Hub ambassador. You know, am I part of the problem myself, or am I a good agent of change? Or what can I do? And speaking of the fact that we also have personal issues and stuff. So yeah, there was a lot of questions going on, and the whole social distance and COVID didn't really help. But at least it gives us also some opportunities to have some hard conversation. And at the Paris Hub, we've having been some hard conversations, especially after the Black Lives Matter moments, I would say, if I can name it that way. And yeah, and discussing with other hubs, and we know that yeah, we had some issues, and somehow we don't know how to start, and sometimes we feel lonely as a minority there, but at least there's some things going on. But at the same time, I think the key point is accountability, and you know how when we start conversation, when they start a conversation in global Facebook group, and some people start donate, or people start, having some standing on the social media, including, white allies, or any type of initiative that they want to share. Like, how can we be sure that, I don't know, in 6 months, or like, we need to give time to ourselves, and we need to give time to people and stuff, but at the same time, yeah, like, how can we be, what's the good amount of balance that we can have, like, to ask for accountability when you as a minority, when you're active, when you spend a lot of energy and mental health on those kind of conversations, how can you can demand help from the community, and also don't want to always be the black sheep, if I can say it that way, like, that can bring those hard conversations at the global or local level. So it's those kind of things that, yeah, we just try to articulate and figure out and process. So I don't know if that makes much sense, but I just feel that is this kind of keyword that maybe I could share at my level, like how we can build a system that can make us accountable, and how can we see that this is a priority and not being deprioritized by other causes or other things, even if a lot of other causes matter. But sometimes you need to be a bit like, yeah, say, yeah, we can't get rid of that conversation because there was some peak on the social media over the last month and stuff like that. So, yep, that's it for
Thanks,
me.
Pierre. And I'd like to say that I don't know if Victoria has been in touch with you, but we've been thinking about different working groups to create in Sandbox, and one of them will be specifically directed to intersectional justice in the community, and I think that would be a good place. I know we have, the Melanins group, we have Women's Circle, we have some groups that have been having these discussions. A lot of times they're not, they don't go over to the main group, which I think we should have more of those conversations in the main group. So I think this new working group is going to be a good place for us to continue to discuss diversity, as you said, not only when there's like a social media kind of wave, but as a persistent thing. I think also, I also had a question to the group here about hub creation. I don't know if Min is still here, but maybe Min, Netra, and other people can comment. How can we think about creating hubs in other places where we don't have presence, and increase diversity that way as well?
Yeah, I don't have the picture up, but I think Rafa and I did identify that we do have a quote unquote overrepresentation of hubs in Europe and North America, and a lack of representation in hubs in South America, Asia, Africa, Middle East. And so that's kind of a part of our demographics. I think there are like 3 to 4 hubs in South America, 3 to 4 hubs in Africa, Asia as well. So, and I think there's about, this is just completely off the top of my head, so not scientific at all. So apologies, Netra. But, I think there's like 10 to 15 in Europe, 10 to 15 in North America. So that's been part of why we're trying to push for like regional ambassadors, trying to push for more hub creation out in regions that we have lack of representation. But yeah, I think that's definitely something important. And I think the deeper question here is, post census and post this is like, why do we want to be more diverse? Why is it important to be diverse, right? What is the output of being more diverse? Is it just to be diverse? Like just so we can say, hey, look, we're more diverse. And then once we get to diversity, then what? So I think there's something there that we still kind of have to unpackage. But yeah.
Yeah, thanks for passing the mic, Rafa. And Min, I will forgive you. But I think that the key question for us is not diversity for diversity's sake, but we need to think about how diversity can actually serve us and serve our mission. And I personally think that diversity can help turbocharge our mission of personal and professional development. But it's a bigger question, I think, of what do we want our community to look like in the future. 2013, 2014, already, as you saw, we had that little spike, right? And so there was a huge effort to recruit at that time. Now, if we want to go for a hockey stick kind of growth, like many startups do, then that might be a good thing. But if we also recruit too fast, then we might end up with just many disengaged members who are in our Facebook group and don't know what Sandbox is. They just thought it was something cool. So I think it's a real question for our community. Let's gather the information and understand, do we want to add more hubs, or do we want to add more people in existing hubs? Or do we want to engage the people who are already members? And these are all different things, and we can do a little bit of both, but a little bit of everything, but they're going to be trade-offs as well. I don't know if Alex, maybe you want to pop in, or Alexa, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, I'll pop in and just throw something out there, and I don't have the answer to this at all. But thinking about the diversity thing, and I, listening to all this, thinking critically, saying, okay, like why is it hard, right? In our specific ecosystem, because there's all the, normal reasons and excuses for diversity being hard. But I don't think that you can separate the diversity issue in Sandbox from the deprofessionalization of Sandbox. And I joined in late 2017. So I learned my Sandbox history, and I love to tell the story to other people. And I'm like, there was a mutiny in the dead of night and everybody left one Facebook group and they ran to the other one. And I wasn't there for that, but I've learned my history, right? And so when I go out now to try to recruit new members, of course, the epic question is, what am I recruiting them to? But part of that, I think, especially when you think about the diversity issue specifically, is it is pretty straightforward to go out and find a list of, I'm in London, the 20 best up and coming women of color founders in London, and be like, yo, I'm part of this awesome professional networking group. You got to be a part of it. We want you in here. This is all of the incredible stuff that you will get as a part of it, and so on and so forth. It is harder in, I think, the current iteration of Sandbox, at least in the version of it that I know, which is the, and I say this to sort of exaggerate the point because I love so many aspects of it, but the hippy dippy feel good, I don't know what that person does, and I love that I haven't known what that person does for 6 years, and let's all talk about open relationships another fucking time. To recruit somebody who is not in my normal ecosystem into that, it's not that they don't want to be, but it's harder to explain. For me to go out and talk to a stranger in completely separate ecosystem from mine, which is where I'm going to find people of color, people of neurodiversity, people of socioeconomic diversity. I'll just say my point again right now is I don't think that you can separate the deprofessionalization from the diversity issue. And I don't know how we fix that.
Well, Alexa, I think it's an excellent point that you make, and I think that this is a tension of our community of how to be authentic, how to connect on a human level, but how to recognize also that we have professional ambitions and we want to basically nurture the whole self. And I don't necessarily think they have to be in intention. I think one of the beautiful things that I've seen are people who join. So for those of you who were at the town hall earlier, they join for maybe transactional reasons, like they want to start a startup or whatever. And either they're successful or they're not successful. But in some cases, they are successful and then they ask themselves, now what? And then they actually go on another path of amazing personal development. But I think maybe the solution here, or maybe the question that I'm hearing you say is, how do we pitch Sandbox to the people who would enrich Sandbox and who would potentially get out of it? What is our value proposition to them? And how do we make them feel understood? When I joined as a woman in a mostly male hub, I was okay. I was kind of used to that. And I think most people who are in tech are okay with that. But how does it feel from a flip side? So how does it feel if you're from a certain social economic background, and then all of the meals are priced at $30 US because now we're old, because our big Sandbox family is over 30, and so we will get a second cocktail. How does that feel? And then how does that feel on the flip side too, when you have to explain to people about the microaggressions that you go through? So I think this is ultimately a question that's answered hub by hub, and that hubs should co-create their vision and their strategy with each other. I know there's some great initiatives coming from the Governance Council to help ambassadors talk to each other about developing a vision.
I had another question. So we got 40% of answers, and obviously we wanted more. We were gonna be happy with 50. We got close, but what about the 60% who didn't answer? What are we thinking that the reason behind that disengagement right now? And one thing that seems to me that is, and I know that Lemana, maybe like for you to talk about the gratitude ceremony, but do you think people sometimes don't see the value for whatever reason, but they don't know what to do? They kind of are just hanging around because there's no path to kind of move on from Sandbox. Some people have done that. It seems very hard for a lot of people. And do you think we lack a path for kind of like moving on for those who want to? And do you think that's necessary?
Well, I'll let Alex chime in, but I think that people so this goes back to the question of, did we as Sandbox change our mission, or did we as human beings grow? And it's going to be a little bit of both, right? And I think we need to allow that change, and we should also allow people who aren't getting any value in Sandbox to leave. I mean, there's no point trying to hold on to them. And also they might come back. So we have to facilitate growth, I think, for members. And I don't know, Alex, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, here what I always like to kind of like draw parallel when I'm explaining, because what we actually see in our community, again, I'm not like for very long in this community, but what we've seen is that people leave, and they kind of, they don't necessarily leave in the nicest way, right? So it feels like they got really, really saturated and they just left, which is fine because maybe they changed or the community changed. And it's all part of the journey in whichever like life stage we are. But it shouldn't be like a bad breakup. So you should be able to kind of, even if you decide that your Sandbox journey is over and that like your life journey is not gonna go together with Sandbox, you should be able to kind of look back and be grateful for everything that happened and to kind of really appreciate it. So this is kind of the idea that we would have. At the same time, I mean, I think that understanding where we are as the community and which the census is going to allow us, I hope, when we go a bit deeper into the data and like we ask more questions and so on, would also allow people to be more engaged. Maybe this is going to be more locally, so different hubs are going to have different types of engagement because this is going to depend on the diversity within each hub or the preference of the hub and so on. but I really hope that like, so, okay, that like this way we are gonna kind of help out people better decide if they want to be part of this community or not. Because if you really want to be part of the community and you really want to be like engaged, right, I think you can also like help it go further. That was a bit philosophical now, but
I just dropped a sketch taking this amazing course on community building by Fabian and Michelle. I don't know, Michelle, if you're in here. I shared a screenshot of Fabian's sketch of member engagement, where you might join at first as a passive consumer, which is a little bit transactional, and that's okay because you're still trying to figure things out. And then you move to a phase of co-creation, and then you eventually move to becoming a steward of the community. And so I think we just need to understand the whole Sandbox journey, and understand that that can ebb and flow. And I think currently it's kind of like the elephant in the room, where we're not able to say, well, what happens when your needs change?
I think that's also intertwined with like, what does Sandbox offer, right? And how do we onboard people? I feel like, I don't know, like, oh, like coming from Sandbox Singapore, you know, and then moving to America and starting to come to understand the history of what's conversations that people have been talking about for the last 10 years or whatever, is kind of jarring, right? And most people don't know what Alexa was referring to, like, oh, you know, the Exodus and the comeback, and what does that mean philosophically? Like, some of that I didn't know until I spoke to Rahaf and Tia, like somewhere else on a phone call, literally, and like I got it from them directly. And so I think that's a big thing. So it's like history, engagement, what do we offer? Some people just get thrown into this Facebook group and they don't know what to do with it, right? And yeah, also like, and how does all of that fit into where you are in your life? And as we age, we're gonna all become 40 at some point. None of us are 40 yet, except for maybe one or two Sandboxers who slip through.
Michael, tell us. I think it's
Michael?
6.
How many Sandboxers do we have who are over 40?
I would need to check, and I think I'm not allowed to disclose this information, but yeah, it's more than one.
I mean, that's really interesting.
And just back to what Alexandra said, I find this topic of engaging older members interesting. And what I heard is similar to when you go to school and then you never come back, sort of thing. Like sometimes there's that moment where you feel awkward coming back because you don't know the new people, but at the same time, there's so much value in like mixing different ages up. So having a bit of an exchange, even if it's not so regular, but I think there is a lot of value in that, in hearing from like previous engaged people. So I'm just wondering in general, like maybe some of you have ideas how to make this feel less awkward. I think that's the reason why older members are, like, some of them never coming back.
Well, we're going to be prototyping one of those ways on Sunday at 4 p.m. Paris time, so I'm going to plug it. It'll be our very first global gratitude gathering, where members who understand the value that they got from Sandbox, and who feel called to share, are being provided a platform to share. And so this is something that I think will allow Sandboxers to feel recognized, to feel that their Sandbox journey is valid, because they're different in so many ways. And hopefully it'll create space for us to have a conversation about how they see themselves going forward in Sandbox, which right now is still that elephant in the room and still uncomfortable, as you said, Julian. And so we only see it in very dramatic exits, and or maybe silent unsubscribes.
And by the way, to answer a bit of the question that I asked, one thing that I realized funnily works a bit is I wrote to some of the members who I didn't know in the hub, who were there for many years before I had joined. And then I told them, by the way, there was this event. And then it happened sometimes that some of them joined. and then like started rejoining some of the events.
Absolutely, and I think that age is actually not a good indicator for our value proposition. I think it's more of the time that you've been in Sandbox, but this is something that we'll need more data to confirm.
Alvaro?
Natra, I just wanted to add that we had a lot of discussions about having families and dependents and just changing lifestyle. That's something we did not explore in this one.
Yeah, great idea for a future survey. We had all the questions. We had so many questions. And decided that we might launch that at a later date. So if you're really passionate about a specific angle that we need to take, whether it's diversity or how to change our value proposition, I guess, to cater for us as we get older, so that we can truly keep everyone in the big Sandbox family, like get in touch with us at the sandboxcensus@gmail.com address.
I was going to ask you, might it be interesting to ask the members that are 35 and above, those who have been for several years, what kept them coming back? Why did they keep being part of Sandbox? I think those answers probably will also give you a bit of the journey of the motivation. But I think it has phases, right? And if you look at the data that you have just shared, it's pretty obvious that you have the first 3-4 years where you're really excited about it and you really recommend it. And then you have a valley, a death valley, where you're like, kind of, don't know many people anymore. I don't know what I'm doing here. And then you have another spike of the people that have been for a long time, and it's kind of a family to them that they're not going to leave. And those people have gone through the valley, so it would be interesting to know, that journey. I think that could be another data collection in the future.
That's a very good observation. And the tricky part here is that actually most people in the community or majority is going through that phase, because median is, at least from the sample, is around 32 or 33 years and around 6 years in Sandbox, which is the, like the middle of the value of this engagement.
And the last thing I wanted to suggest, and this is more of a personal journey to me, when I kind of think why keep coming back to Sandbox is because it's a community that I have identified in my life as something that is for giving others. It's not something that I come to get something, but I generally come to give. And I think when we are talking about looking for new members and looking about diversity, I think I feel that's what keeps me stable coming back, because I'm not expecting to receive. And if you join a network expecting or looking for something to get, generally that's short-sighted. But when you join expecting to give and you keep giving during the journey, I think that is much more sustainable, and looking for people that are willing to give instead of looking for things. I think it's going to be a way of making it much more sustainable and rich. That's sorry, there's a question.
No, I was just summarizing what you said, Alvaro, that I used a lot of businessy language around value proposition, but maybe we also need to identify those members that are coming back to give. And that might actually be what catapults us into the next phase of communities, which is communities where people join and they feel empowered to serve. So maybe that's the next stage for Sandbox. And so I didn't plan it, but I think that's a really great place to leave this conversation. Really look forward to bumping into you in Topia. Again, amazing amazing job, Virtual Summit team. I feel so warm and happy to have this experience with all of you. And a huge thank you to Michael and for doing these last minute visualizations, and to the whole TNT team. See you guys soon.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Looking forward to bump into you.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, Nat.
drop on top of you, Georgie.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for putting all the slides together. With,
Thank you,
JJ.
Georgie.
Yeah,
You're the
thank
best.
you guys. See you on the
Thanks
other
for
side.
the team.
See you around.
Bye.
Hey, I was waiting for it to be us.
Yeah. Hello. Well done.
Bye.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Yeah, that was great. It's a lot of data.
Oh my gosh.
Richard,
Yeah.
there?
Sorry, Richard? Richard, so glad to see you here. And I tried to, oh, he's not here. I tried following him around on Topia because I wanted to ask him how he was doing, and I lost him.
Yeah, he was there. He was there
Yeah.
as well. But yeah, anyway, I hope you're content. It was a good, really good first shoot.
Thank you so much, Georgie. Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit less nervous this time. I was more nervous for that town hall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just wanted people to know that we had put some